So I've gone ahead and started GNS3, and now I need to create a new project. So I'll go to my File menu, and I'll do a new blank project, and I'll just name that VLANS. And now I'll go ahead and build this. So I need 2 switches. I'll keep them up here so when I zoom in it looks better. And a second switch. And let's go ahead and bring my host devices over. Double clicked it. Need to bring over Linux 1, Linux 2, Linux 3, and Linux 4. Now I'm going to go ahead and let these devices, I'm going to click the start button to start all of the devices, and then I'll go ahead and move them around a little bit. And then I'll start creating some links. So I've got my devices pretty well positioned, close enough. Now I'll use my link tool, and I will connect 11 to 11, and then 12 to 12. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on my port tool, and I'll reposition some of these labels so I can see them better and really see what's going on here. 11 to 11, 12 to 12. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add my links for S1. Ethernet 1 goes to Linux 1. Ethernet 2 goes to Linux 2. And then Ethernet 3 goes to port 3 here. And Linux 4 is going to connect to Ethernet 4. I always like to have my device names match the switch ports. It makes it a lot easier for me to remember what's connected to what. And I can move some labels around to make this a little bit easier to see. And I'll just bring these down too so they're not blocked. Move that. Okay, and then I can zoom in a little bit to make this a little bit easier to see. And the next thing I need to do is I'm going to draw some background images. So I always like to have, shapes drawn on here to help me isolate what is connected to what. It makes it easier, especially on larger projects. Let me move that down a little bit to make a square. Now I'll make another square. And I'll just click and drag that next to the, right below the first one. And I can enlarge it. And the last thing I'm going to do is now I can style it. So I'll right click and change the style, and I'll make the top one yellow. Actually, I found out that you can actually change the border style to no border. So I'll just get rid of the border and apply that. And then click OK, and I'll make this one right click, and I'll change the fill color to blue, and then I'll change the border to no border. Apply. OK. Now I'm going to have to send these to the back. Lower one layer. Lower one layer. Now I can add some notes here. So I'm going to say VLAN 10. 192.168.10.0/24. So I'll make sure I know that all the devices here are on VLAN 10. I'm just going to duplicate that, and I'll move it down here for VLAN 20. Sometimes it's hard for me to get the cursor, so it's just easier for me to go into text edit and then click OK. Now I just need to worry about the host portion of my address, so I'll do .1, .2, .3. Another thing I like to do with host addresses is always have them match the host name. It makes it real easy for me to know what address if I want to ping something. I don't have to look it up in a table or anything. So I'll make sure that one is 10.1. This one will be 20.2. This one will be 10.3, And this last one will be 10.4. So now I've got everything set up and configured, and I've got a nice clean diagram to look at and really understand what's going on with my lab. Now I need to go ahead and configure the IP addresses on all of my hosts. So I'm going to just go up here and click the console connect to all devices, and I'll let Solar Putty get started. I've got it all. So let's start with Alpine Linux 1. The command is IP address add 192.168.10.1. It's /24. And then ifconfig just to check that. And I got that address. Widen this out a little bit. So now let's go to 2. Address 2 is 20.2. I always like to check every time I put an address on something. It's just best practice for me to double check. Just look at it a second time and make sure that it actually took. Now, and there's Alpine Linux 3, and now we've got Alpine Linux 4 IP address. Actually, I could move this over here a little bit so we can actually see the addresses. So all my addresses have IPs. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to send a broadcast packet and see where my broadcasts go right now. Right now, all of these devices, all of these ports are in the default VLAN, which is VLAN 1. And let's take a look at the behavior of what happens if I ping the broadcast address. Where does it go and all of that? So I'm going to go to Alpine Linux 1, and I'm going to send a ping to the broadcast. Ping 192.168.10.255. I'm not going to get a response from this, but this machine is going to keep sending ping messages to everybody on the 10.0 network. So if I go to the link for Alpine Linux 4, right click to it, I can start a packet capture. And I'll click OK. It's going to start Wireshark for me. And now I can see that pings from Alpine Linux 1 are getting to Alpine Linux 4. And we don't want that to happen. We want these devices to be connected to the same switch, but we want to isolate those two. We don't want members of VLAN 10 and the yellow here to be able to send traffic to devices in the blue area. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that ping right now. So I'll go back to my console and I'll just hit Control-C to stop the ping. So now we're no longer pinging, and I can even, for right now, I could stop the cap. I can stop my packet capture by right-clicking right there for now. And I could even close Wireshark, what the heck. And I'll close it, quit it without saving. So how do we stop that? Well, the way we stop that is we create VLANs. So let's go down into our switches and create our 2 VLANs. So I'll start on switch 1, and I'll open up my console. Actually, I've got my console down here still. The bottom, so I'll just go to the console of S1, and now what I want to do is I want to put ports Ethernet 1 and Ethernet 11 into VLAN 10 and put ports 2 and 12 into VLAN 20, and of course I've got to create the VLANs as well. So let's get started. Admin, and then enable to get into privilege exec mode. Now I'm in global config mode. So the first thing I always like to do when I'm in a new device is I like to put the name in it. That way when I look at the prompt, I know exactly what I'm looking at. So now my prompt has changed. Now I know when I'm looking right at my command prompt, I know exactly what device I'm in. So now let's create the VLANs. Create VLAN 10 and name it. Exit out of there, back to global config. Now I'll create VLAN 20. Name it blue. So I got my two VLANs created, but I haven't assigned any ports to the VLAN. So to do that, I'm going to go into interface config and tell each port what VLAN they're in. So I'm going to go into interface, Ethernet, and command is switch port. Move my cursor. Access VLAN 10. And then I put Ethernet 1 into VLAN 10. Now I got to put 11 into VLAN 2 as well. And I've added ports 1 and 11 into VLAN 10. So next I need to put 2 and 12 into VLAN 20. So I'm going to type interface. I can abbreviate that command as well. I don't have to type the whole word and the device will know what it means. Ethernet 2. VLAN 20. So I'm going to put Ethernet 2 into VLAN 20. And I'll exit. And I'm going to use the up arrow. And then I just have to change that to 12. So I can bring my command history back. And I can use the up arrow to bring back and do the command for switch port access VLAN 20. Now getting out of config mode again. Now let's just double check it with the command show VLAN. That's going to show me my two VLANs. These are the ones I'm looking at. And 1 and 11 are indeed in VLAN 10. 2 and 12 are in VLAN 20. Okay, so now let's go to S2 and we'll configure the VLAN 10 and VLAN 20 on S2. So log in with admin and enable and configure terminal to get into global config. Now let's name this device S2. Now I need to create my VLANs. VLAN 10, name yellow. I could exit out of this, or I could just switch over to VLAN 20 by issuing the command VLAN 20. And I will exit. Now I need to go and assign ports 3 and 11 to VLAN 10. 3. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've added switch port access VLAN 10 to Ethernet 3. And then I went into Ethernet 11 and I did the command switch port access VLAN 10. So those should both be in VLAN 10. Last step I want to do is I want to put Ethernet 4 and 12 into VLAN 20. Int ETH 4. I'm going to add that to VLAN 20. I'm going to use my up arrow. And then I'll just change that Ethernet 4 to 12. And the up arrow again to bring back switch port access VLAN 20. And then show VLAN just to double check. It's always best to double check and make sure that what you typed in gave you the results you expected before you move on any further and then create problems. Now I can double check 3 and 11. They are indeed in VLAN 10. 4 and 12 are indeed in VLAN 20. So now let's take a look at what's going on with that. So now let me take a ping of my broadcast again. So let me go back to Alpine Linux 1 and the console. So I can just come down here and bring up Solar Putty and go into Alpine Linux 1. And let's do that ping again. So I'll just do the up arrow to bring back that ping. And now I want to observe how this ping behaves on both of these links. So let me go on to my link to Alpine Linux 3. That's a device that's in the same VLAN, and I'll turn on that packet capture. And let's look at that. Look at that. I got all kinds of ICMP messages going from 10.1 to 10.255. But are we receiving those messages here still? So I'll start the capture here again. And I brought that one up. And I am not receiving any ICMP messages on that link. So let's just bring both of these up together and we can observe them together. So as I scroll this over here, I can see that I'm getting all kinds of ICMP messages from 10.1 to 10.255 going to Alpine Linux 3. So this one's getting all kinds of ICMP messages to the broadcast. This port is not receiving any of those broadcast frames because this port, Ethernet 4, is on VLAN 20, Ethernet 3 is on VLAN 10. So now we've created a scenario where users Alpine Linux 1 and Alpine Linux 3 cannot communicate or send any type of traffic to Alpine Linux 2 and 4. So this concludes this lab demonstration. I hope it explained everything well for you, and thanks for watching.